Hey, welcome to the video. So there's always a lot of chatter about what the best version of World of Warcraft is, what the best expansion was, what the worst expansion was. And I'm always wondering to myself, what is actually the best and worst version of World of Warcraft? I know it's subjective, everyone's going to like a different version, but I decided to go out, grab some numbers from a few different sources, and put together this list of all the World of Warcraft expansion packs, their ratings, from worst to best. We'll go over them, and then I'll talk about my final thoughts at the end. So the sources that I gathered. So Metacritic critic score, Metacritic user score, and IGDB. So I thought this was a nice mix of user reviews and critic reviews, because I know critics will review a game a lot higher than players because they want to stay in the publishers and the developers' good books. So I figured with Metacritic, it's going to be like an aggregate of all the big reviewers, and then the user scores from the two different sources should balance that out and give us a pretty good, guess at what people think about these expansions and, a good rating overall. So I added up the three ratings and then I just took the average of the three. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Number 11, Battle for Azeroth. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. So the critics gave it a 79, the users gave it a 32. This is what I mean with quite the difference. And then IGDB gave it a 71. Now, take the IGDB reviews, with a pinch of salt. That is a website that doesn't have a lot of reviews. I wanted to find more user reviews, but this was one of the only websites I came across that had all the expansions with user reviews. So I found it leaned rather high than the typical Metacritic user reviews. So at the end, I'll compile things in a different order based on the different reviews. So it got an average of 60.66%. And I can see why this wasn't a super great expansion pack. Azerite Power sucked. I really liked the theme of this one, so it was like, it really felt bad that this one failed, because there's like some cool pirate stuff, there's, cool jungle stuff, there's Battle for Azeroth, I thought we were going back to the roots, but it was just kind of like a, very lackluster, boring expansion that didn't really hit across the board. So number 10, Shadowlands. I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone either. The critics gave it an 83, the users gave it a 47, and then the users on IGDB gave it a 59 for an average score of 63. This expansion I found, what I didn't like about it was the fact that all the end zones in Shadowlands were all disconnected. You didn't feel like you were in this open world, you felt like you were in this instanced area. Torghast, while I felt like it was a good idea, it fell short with its features and how it played. So I think there was a lot of promise with this. They had a cool theme, but it just didn't land. I also didn't like Covenants. I thought that was kind of stupid. It gives you kind of like this false freedom of choice where you can pick between what Covenant you think is cool, but really at the end of the day, there's a meta because each one gives you a different kind of ability. So Shadowlands, it didn't hit. Number 9, Mists of Pandaria. So currently this is what's in Classic right now. They're playing through Mists of Pandaria. Critics gave it an 82, users gave it a 53, IGDB gave it a 78, and for an average of 71 overall. Thematically, I thought this was a pretty cool expansion. The Pandaren were kind of hit and miss. They looked a little goofy, but I think the zones looked really good. Timeless Isle was really good, so I think each of these expansions are going to have good and bad stuff about them, but, overall, some of them didn't hit as well as others. Number 8, Warlords of Draenor. Critics gave it an 87, users gave it a 53, and a 71 for an average of 71.66. I actually really liked this expansion. I know a lot of people hated it. I found the leveling experience was a lot of fun, and for some reason this was the expansion I really got into PvP and Arena. So it has a special place in my heart, because me and my buddies, we all would go over to my one friend's house and we would just play Arena all day. So I guess I could have done that in any expansion, but I did it in this expansion. I think this one, there's a bit of a sour taste because they changed the character models. They upgrade them to the new ones, and I love the old character models. I just found the new ones are a little too cartoonish, a little too bouncy, but overall, not the worst expansion, not the best expansion, but it was alright. Number 7, Dragonflight. So Dragonflight kind of marked a bit of a, maybe a turnaround for retail World of Warcraft. They just came out of Shadowlands, which was terrible expansion. And so this was kind of a step in the right direction. Critics gave it an 82. Metacritic users gave it a 51. IGDB gave it an 84 for an average of 72.33. Dragon riding was a really good addition to the game. It kind of marked the beginning of some more evergreen features coming to retail, so overall I think this was a pretty alright expansion pack. It sits right in the middle, so take that for what it's worth. Number 6, where we're at now, The War Within. Critics gave it an 85, users gave it a 55, IGDB gave it an 81, and for an average of 73.66. So again, I think coming off of Dragonflight, we're moving in the right direction. We're kind of improving the game. The story still isn't great, but I think gameplay-wise, mechanically, they're not really adding these features that are going to get abandoned. We're moving more into that evergreen mindset, especially going into Midnight with housing and different features like that. So War Within, pretty good expansion. I think this is slowly marking, you know, retail's hopeful rise back to fame. Cataclysm. Now, I was really surprised that this one landed so high on the list because I personally hated this expansion pack. Critics gave it a 90, users gave it a 58, IGDB gave it a 77 for an average of 75. Now, the thing I didn't like about this expansion was the fact that they destroyed Azeroth. I love original Azeroth. It was crafted beautifully, and it marked a big change in how you level up, how you quest, you know, the zone design, just an overall different build for the game. I think they did hit pretty hard with Vashir. I love that zone. I know it's not a super popular zone, but the fact that they made a fully underwater zone, I think, you know, that takes a lot of balls to do something like that, and I really like that zone, and I think they should do more things like that in the future. I know a lot of people like the raids, but for me this one didn't really hit. But it's nice that we got the Worgen and the Goblin. Number 4. So, Legion, no surprise. Critics gave it an 88, users gave it a 74, IGDB gave it an 85 for an average of 82.33. Now, I know a lot of people love this expansion. Out of all the modern expansions, this is definitely a favorite, and based off of the list, it shows with the score. I personally didn't like it. I know I'm kind of like a minority in thinking that. I couldn't get behind artifact weapons. I don't like that borrowed power idea. The idea of you get this one weapon that's, you know, in the lore, it's crazy and everyone gets it. It's just, I don't know. It kind of takes away that special feeling of having a really cool, crazy item. But then again, I know a lot of people like this expansion, so I'm not going to hate on it too much. Right now, people are playing through Legion Remix and having a lot of fun, so that's why it's sitting so high up on the list. And now, the next 3. Now, I think it's no surprise what 3 are coming up. These are what built World of Warcraft into the game it is today, and I think everyone knew that these games were going to be in the top 3. But I thought it was kind of an interesting order of how they ended up in the top 3. So, number 3, Classic. Critics gave it a 93, users gave it a 75, IGDB gave it an 84 for an average of 84. Now, I was kind of surprised that the Metacritic users scored this so low. This was the birth of World of Warcraft, has some of the most iconic dungeons and raids. It's my personal favorite version of the game, so I'm happy to see it sit so high up on the list. But yeah, this was Classic. I was just really surprised it was number 3. Alright, now we have number 2, Wrath of the Lich King. Critics gave it a 91, users gave it an 82, IGDB gave it a 90, for an average of 87.66. So this and Burning Crusade were like disgustingly close. I think it's only a matter of like a 1 point difference across the board, so take that for what it is. You know, Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade, amazing expansion packs. You know, I think Wrath of the Lich King was so popular because you're closing out the Warcraft 3 story. Arthas is such an important character in the lore. Northrend is beautiful, it's badass, the zones are great, the music is great, the gear is great. You know, I could glaze Wrath of the Lich King all day. The box art is amazing. It's just, you know, this is peak World of Warcraft for a lot of people. And then the Burning Crusade. So yeah, as you can see, I think the difference is like IGDB gave this 1 more point than Wrath of the Lich King. So critics gave it a 91, users gave it an 82, IGDB gave it a 91 for an average of 88. Now this was a really important expansion pack. It was the first one to be introduced to the game, so naturally it's going to be a lot of people's favorite. A lot of people didn't get into World of Warcraft at vanilla. This is when they got into the game, added the Draenor and the Blood Elves, really expanded the game, added flying, started taking World of Warcraft in the course that it's at today. We have this coming up for anniversary, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, order, if we based it completely off the critics, it would be Battle for Azeroth, Mists of Pandaria and Dragonflight, Shadowlands, War Within, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, Cataclysm, Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade, and Classic. So the critics actually thought that Classic was the best. I wanted to provide these just to give a little bit of insight on what the breakdown is by category. Users thought Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands, Dragonflight, Mists, War Within, Draenor, Cataclysm, Legion, Classic, and then Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King were even. And then IGDB, Shadowlands, Battle for Azeroth, Warlords of Draenor, Cataclysm, Mists, War Within, Dragonfight Classic, Legion, Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade. So, final thoughts. Are you surprised? Comment below if you're surprised. I am not really surprised. I think we can all agree that the War Within is a step in the right direction. Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands were garbage. I think those are pretty agreed upon across the board, and it shows. So yeah, if any of these surprise you, let me know in the comments. I just want to say, no list is definitive. While I gathered, all the easily accessible numbers I could, everyone's going to have a different list. Everyone's going to have a different preference. By no means, if you like Battle for Azeroth or Shadowlands, all the power to you. Everyone can like what they want to like. This was just the data that I gathered, so take that with a pinch of salt. Yeah, play what you want. We all love World of Warcraft. It's not a battle. Love what you want to love, hate what you want to hate, but don't take away from someone else's fun. We're all just trying to enjoy the same game. My personal favorite is Classic, will always be Classic. I am a Classic content creator, and I will always be playing it. So if you like this video, let me know, comment below. Let me know what your favorite expansion was, why, what features you didn't like in other expansions, and yeah, thanks for coming by, and I'll see you in the next one. So have a great night.